Nicholas was raised by his grandmother, Margarita, without knowing much about his parents. Although the boy frequently asked about them, she would only say that his mother had passed away and that his father had left town, never to return. Despite the unanswered questions, Nicholas received all the love and care Margarita could give. However, when a sudden illness struck Margarita, Nicholas was taken to an orphanage. Even though life had become more difficult, Nicholas never allowed himself to lose hope. Shortly after arriving at the orphanage, he found a way to escape each night to earn money by singing, driven by the purpose of paying for his grandmother's surgery. Little did he know his life was about to change forever. At the age of 14, Nicholas began living in the long, quiet halls and silent courtyards of an orphanage in Crete. The place was calm, but carried the weight of absence. For someone so young, Nicholas already bore the heavy burden of responsibility. His life had shifted drastically in recent months. Ever since Margarita, his only family, had fallen ill. The news that she required urgent surgery devastated him. With no means to cover the medical expenses, Nicholas felt lost, unsure of how he could save the woman who had raised him with so much love. Since Margarita could no longer care for him, he was sent to the orphanage on a rainy morning. As he gazed through the dusty window of his new home, Nicholas felt a mixture of despair and a flicker of hope. He knew he had to do something extraordinary to raise the money. While searching through a box of old memories hidden under his bed, Nicholas found a faded photograph of his grandmother, Margarita, smiling on a stage, holding a microphone. This image reminded him of his own hidden talent, singing. He had always sung for his grandmother, filling their small home with music and joy. Now, that very talent might be the key to saving her. Remembering Margarita's deep love for music, Nicholas decided he had to perform in front of an audience. It was his only chance to make money. After some research, he discovered that a local restaurant called Villa Churrasco Grill hosted live performances. It seemed like the perfect place for his voice to be heard, and with luck, he might even earn some money. Determined, Nicholas decided that the very next day, he would go there and ask for a chance. The following afternoon, beneath cloudy skies, Nicholas arrived at the Villa Churrasco Grill. The restaurant had a cozy and sophisticated atmosphere, a stark contrast to the orphanage's reality. He watched everything closely as he approached the counter, where the restaurant's owner, Teodoro Valente, observed the movements of his customers. Teodoro was a middle-aged man with a rigid posture, but his eyes betrayed a hidden generosity beneath his severe appearance. Nicholas, feeling both nervous and hopeful, approached. "Sir, I need a job," he began, trying to keep his voice steady, though his eyes revealed the desperation he was attempting to hide. Teodoro raised an eyebrow, surprised by the sight of a young boy in such a place. "You're just a child," Teodoro replied with doubt in his tone. "This is no place for kids." Yet, Nicholas refused to be discouraged. "Art knows no age. I can sing. Please, give me a chance. I really need this opportunity." Teodoro studied the boy critically, but something in Nicholas' determination and sincerity made him pause. It was rare to see someone so young and yet so resolute. Curiosity and compassion stirred within Teodoro. "All right," Teodoro said with a reluctant sigh. "I'll listen to you sing. If you truly have talent, I'll give you a chance." Nicholas took a deep breath, feeling both relief and anxiety flood him. This was the opportunity he had been waiting for. He closed his eyes briefly, gathering his strength. This wasn't just about talent. It was about his deep love for his grandmother and the hope of saving her. He inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his young shoulders, and closed his eyes again, seeking an intimate connection with the music. The song he chose, Chega de Sade by Tom Jobim, flowed from his lips with a clarity that astonished everyone in the restaurant. As Nicholas sang, the atmosphere of the Villa Churrasco Grill seemed to transform into something magical. Despite his youth, his voice carried a depth and intensity that filled the room. Every note was delivered with precision, and every pause was laced with genuine emotion. His music did more than just echo through the restaurant. It touched the hearts of all who listened. That day marked the beginning of a journey Nicholas had never anticipated. His voice, fueled by love and desperation, would soon open doors he had never imagined possible. But as he stood there, finishing his song, he realized that this moment was just the first step in a much larger path ahead. The music didn't just fill the space, it touched the hearts of everyone present. The customers, who had been immersed in their conversations and enjoying their meals, began to fall silent, captivated by the beauty of Nicholas's performance. The murmur of voices was replaced by a respectful and almost reverent attention. The following minutes seemed to pass in the blink of an eye, as if time itself had slowed down, drawn in by the power of his voice. When Nicholas hit the final note, it resonated throughout the restaurant, leaving a stunned silence in its wake, charged with a nearly tangible sense of admiration. For a brief moment, it felt as if time had stopped for everyone. Then, as though the spell had been broken, the room erupted into a storm of applause. The clapping was loud, intense, and filled with a shared emotion, as many of the customers rose to their feet, applauding enthusiastically. Even Teodoro Valente, standing behind the counter, watched in awe. He had seen many performers and encountered numerous talents, but the sincerity and strength in Nicholas's voice were undeniable. As the applause finally began to die down, Teodoro walked over to Nicholas, a smile on his face, but with a serious expression in his eyes. "You've got talent, kid," he said, his voice filled with admiration and authority. "I'll offer you a job, but on two conditions. First, you must keep your grades up at school, and second, you can't tell anyone about this arrangement. Do you understand?" Nicholas, still catching his breath and feeling the adrenaline coursing through him, nodded quickly, overwhelmed by a wave of relief and gratitude. He knew that this was the opportunity he needed to raise the money for his grandmother's surgery. "Yes, Mr. Valente," Nicholas responded firmly. "I understand, and I promise I'll stick to the agreement." "Thank you so much." Teodoro nodded, satisfied with Nicholas's response. "Good. You start tomorrow. We'll discuss the details, but I want you to know, despite the rules, I'm here to help you in any way I can." Nicholas left the restaurant feeling a renewed sense of hope. As he walked back to the orphanage, the weight on his shoulders felt lighter, and the night that was falling over Crete seemed less dark. He was determined to seize every opportunity that came his way. Back at the orphanage, Denise, the cook, was like a mother figure to all the children, but her special fondness for Nicholas was obvious to everyone. In her early 50s, with gray hair tied in a simple bun, she had a warm presence that made everyone feel safer. Her voice was always gentle and understanding, offering comfort that many of the orphans couldn't find elsewhere. That night, as the smell of dinner filled the kitchen, Nicholas, with a nervous expression and an air of secrecy, approached Denise. She was busy arranging utensils and preparing dessert for the evening, a task that often helped her distract herself from the worries of life at the orphanage. Nicholas waited until the last child had left the kitchen. Then, with a determined look, he spoke. "Denise, I need to tell you something," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "I got a job at a restaurant at Villa Churrasco Grill. Mr. Valente gave me a chance to sing there." Denise raised her eyebrows, both surprised and concerned. "A job? But you're so young, Nicholas. Are you sure you'll be able to handle this? Won't it be too difficult to manage with school and your life here at the orphanage?" Nicholas shook his head, his eyes shining with hope. "I'll do my best to keep my grades up and handle my responsibilities. I need this job to help my grandmother. She's very sick, and I want to do everything I can to pay for her surgery." Denise sighed, her soft eyes filled with empathy. She knew that Nicholas was a determined boy, and her concern wasn't just about the job itself, but also about the effort and sacrifice it would require. "If you're that determined, I'll help you," she said with an encouraging smile. "But you have to promise me you'll be careful. We don't want you getting hurt or overburdening yourself." Nicholas smiled in relief and nodded quickly. "I promise, Denise. I just need a small favor to help me sneak out of the orphanage at night without anyone noticing, without the other kids or the director knowing." The cook thought for a moment, then nodded. "I'll help you sneak out every night after the others are asleep. I'll open the back door for you. That's the most discreet way. And with that, the plan was set into motion. Every night, after the hallway lights were turned off and silence reigned over the orphanage, Denise prepared for the familiar ritual of helping Nicholas slip out unnoticed. Each step she took was filled with a mixture of pride and worry, knowing that Nicholas was determined to follow his heart, but concerned about the risks he was taking. For Nicholas, Denise's support was a source of deep gratitude. Every evening, he waited patiently for the signal to make his way to the restaurant, his mind focused solely on his mission. Each time he passed through the back door, he felt the weight of the world on his shoulders, but also an increasing sense of certainty that he was on the right path. One particular night, the Villa Churrasco grill seemed more elegant than usual. The tables were adorned with white tablecloths and lit candles, creating a cozy yet sophisticated ambience. Among the patrons was Roberta Costa, a wealthy businesswoman in her 40s who had recently moved to the city. Roberta, accustomed to a rigid routine, had made visiting the restaurant part of her effort to adjust to her new life. Seated at the table closest to the stage, she observed her surroundings attentively, but her gaze was distant, as if lost in restless thoughts. There was something about that night that unsettled her, though she couldn't quite pinpoint what it was. As Nicholas stepped onto the stage, the restaurant was filled with excited murmurs, and many customers were eager for the performance. Roberta, absorbed in her own thoughts, barely noticed the young figure preparing to sing. However, the moment Nicholas released the first notes, something shifted within her. His voice was clear, and the melodies he sang seemed to reach deep into her memory. Her eyes widened in surprise. There was something haunting about the timbre of Nicholas's voice that stirred up long-buried memories. It evoked the image of Andre, the man she had loved deeply and who had tragically passed away years ago. The resemblance was eerie, and as the music progressed, Roberta felt a tight knot forming in her chest, growing with every note. The pain spread like a relentless fire, and unable to bear the overwhelming emotions, Roberta stood up, trying to escape the suffocating feelings that were overtaking her. The world around her began to spin. Her legs weakened, her vision blurred, and the sounds of the restaurant faded into a distant hum. The pressure in her chest became unbearable. In her last moments of consciousness, she grasped the edge of the table before collapsing to the floor. The impact was softened by the muffled chatter of the restaurant, but soon, cries of concern filled the air. "Call an ambulance," shouted Teodoro Valente, who rushed toward Roberta with a look of panic and worry. Although he was used to handling all kinds of situations in the restaurant, this was entirely different. He knelt beside Roberta, trying to remain calm while his mind raced to find a solution. The restaurant staff quickly sprang into action. Some grabbed the phone to call emergency services, while others tried to calm the concerned patrons and clear space around Roberta. Chaos briefly took hold as everyone focused on helping Roberta, who now lay on the floor, pale and unconscious. Nicholas, still on the stage after his performance, watched the scene unfold in disbelief. Concerned, he tried to step down to understand what was happening, but the sight of Roberta fainting and the confusion surrounding her left him frozen in place. He realized that his singing had triggered something serious, and the gravity of the situation weighed heavily on him, adding another layer of tension to an already tumultuous night. The evening at the Villa Churrasco grill ended in turmoil as paramedics attended to Roberta. Nicholas, still shaken, finally descended from the stage and approached Teodoro, who stood next to Roberta, offering her comfort while ensuring that proper help was on the way. "It's not your fault, Nicholas," Teodoro said in a firm but reassuring voice. "It was an accident. You have no reason to feel guilty." The following day, Nicholas couldn't shake the thought of Roberta. Questions swirled in his mind, and he felt an overwhelming need to check on her and make sure she was okay. The walk to the hospital was filled with nervous anticipation, his thoughts racing as he wondered why he was so unsettled by the well-being of a woman he barely knew. There was something about her that seemed connected to a part of his own life, and the uncertainty gnawed at him. When Nicholas arrived at the hospital and was directed to Roberta's room, he found her resting in bed, looking fragile. Her eyes were initially closed, but they fluttered open as she sensed someone entering the room. She gazed at him with curiosity and weakness. "Who are you?" Roberta asked in a faint voice. "I'm Nicholas," he replied kindly. "I sing at the restaurant where you collapsed." Roberta's gaze fixed on him, and a look of confusion and surprise crossed her face. Up close, the resemblance of Nicholas to someone she once knew was undeniable, stirring memories that she had long tried to forget. The resemblance to Andre, her former love, was even more unsettling. Roberta felt a sharp pain in her chest, mixed with an eerie sensation. "Do you know someone named Andre?" she asked softly, almost in a whisper. Nicholas shook his head, puzzled. "No, I don't know anyone by that name. I live in an orphanage. My grandmother is sick, and she raised me after my father left." Roberta's mind began to race. Could this boy somehow be connected to Andre? She thought, a growing curiosity gnawing at her. "I need to find out more about him." Meanwhile, back at the restaurant, Teodoro and Denise were discussing the events of the previous night and their implications for Nicholas's future. Teodoro, still shaken, had called Denise for a private conversation. Sitting at one of the restaurant's dimly lit tables, Teodoro looked at her with a troubled expression. "He reminds me of someone," Teodoro said, his voice filled with frustration, "but I can't seem to remember who." Denise nodded, deep in thought. "He truly is special. There's something about him that's hard to define, but it's clear he has a unique presence. We need to protect him and make sure he has the chance to follow his path without interruption." Teodoro nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "Yes, and we also need to consider what Roberta might be seeking. If there's any connection to the past, we must be prepared for whatever comes. Nicholas needs to be protected, and we have to support him in every way possible." As the fates of Roberta and Nicholas began to intertwine in unexpected ways, the complexity of the connections between the past and present started to unravel. In the days following the incident at the restaurant, Nicholas continued his routine with unwavering determination. Every night, when he stepped onto the stage at the Villa Churrasco Grill, his voice filled the air with emotion and inspiration. The money he earned from his performances slowly began to accumulate, but with each performance, Nicholas felt he was getting one step closer to his ultimate goal, raising the amount needed for his grandmother Margarita's surgery. Meanwhile, Roberta was recovering from her heart attack in the hospital. The experience had shaken her, not only physically, but also emotionally. There was a persistent feeling that Nicholas had an inexplicable connection to her past. Still under medical care, her mind constantly wandered through old memories and an unshakable sense of déjà vu that she couldn't explain. The days passed slowly, and with each passing night, Roberta's thoughts returned to the haunting similarities between Nicholas and Andre. One evening, after another successful performance, Teodoro Valente decided it was time to understand the true motivation behind Nicholas's incredible dedication. He had observed the boy with growing admiration and was increasingly moved by his passion and perseverance. Teodoro called Nicholas for a private conversation, hoping to clear up some lingering questions. "You're incredible, Nicholas," Teodoro began, his tone filled with genuine admiration. "But I need to know why you're doing this. What's driving you?" Nicholas took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his mission and the trust he had built with Teodoro. He knew it was time to open up and reveal the truth. "My grandmother is very sick," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "She needs an expensive surgery, and I'm trying to raise the money to help her. She raised me after my father left, but when she got sick, I had to go to the orphanage. Now I want to do everything I can to take care of her." Teodoro listened intently, his heart heavy with sympathy for Nicholas's situation. The boy's story was deeply moving, filled with a courage that stirred Teodoro's emotions. "I'm going to help you, Nicholas," Teodoro said, his voice filled with determination. "You're not alone in this. I'll do whatever I can to help you reach your goal." Teodoro's words brought a sense of relief to Nicholas, who felt a renewed strength to continue on his path. Knowing that he had the support of Teodoro and the restaurant gave him fresh energy and hope. As the days went by and Nicholas continued his performances, Roberta remained in the hospital, recovering physically but tormented by the growing mystery surrounding Nicholas. The fragments of her past began to weave together in increasingly intriguing ways. Now more lucid and with time to reflect, Roberta couldn't shake the feeling that there was something significant in the connection between Nicholas and Andre, her lost love. One afternoon, Roberta lay in her hospital bed, overcome by a sense of discomfort and restlessness that not only manifested in her body, but also in her mind. Every time she closed her eyes, memories of Andre returned to haunt her with a painful clarity. Andre had been a force of nature in her life, a love that consumed her entirely, only to leave her abruptly. Years later, she was still trying to understand what had happened to him, and his absence had never been fully resolved. The similarity between Nicholas and Andre was unsettling. It was as if the young singer carried a piece of Roberta's past with him, stirring up a whirlwind of emotions she had long tried to bury. Roberta remembered the characteristics they both shared: Andre's smile, the tone of his voice, and even certain gestures that Nicholas mirrored in his quiet moments of introspection. Determined to find answers, Roberta began researching Nicholas on the internet, but her search yielded nothing. Frustrated, she wondered if there could be a deeper, real connection between the young boy and the man who had once meant everything to her. Her thoughts were a swirling mix of hope and pain as she tried to piece together the puzzle of her emotions, one that seemed impossible to solve. The lingering connection she felt to Nicholas kept her awake for hours, as she wrestled with the unsettling feeling that there was more to their bond than met the eye. She knew she had to uncover the truth to understand this strange sense of familiarity that haunted her. Meanwhile, Nicholas continued his nightly performances at the Villa Churrasco Grill, and with each passing evening, his shows became more and more popular. The restaurant, once a hidden gem, was now brimming with energy, drawing in larger crowds with every performance. The place had transformed into a vibrant showcase for Nicholas's incredible talent and relentless dedication. His captivating voice and heartfelt delivery turned the restaurant into one of the most talked-about spots in the city. Teodoro, the owner, had become more than just an employer to Nicholas. He had taken on the role of a father figure, not only guiding his performances, but also watching over his well-being. Teodoro regularly offered Nicholas wise advice and words of encouragement, making sure the young boy was well-fed, safe, and most importantly, not overwhelmed by the immense responsibility he had taken on. Their relationship grew naturally and sincerely, with Teodoro seeing not only a talented young singer, but a boy with a pure heart and a noble cause. He deeply admired Nicholas's determination to take care of his grandmother and was committed to supporting him in every possible way. One particularly hectic night, after the restaurant had closed, the atmosphere was calm and peaceful. The lights of the Villa Churrasco Grill had been turned off, yet the last soft echoes of music still lingered between the now empty walls. Teodoro and Nicholas sat together at one of the disheveled tables that still bore the remnants of the evening's lively energy. With a look of pride, Teodoro gazed at Nicholas, the soft glow of a nearby lamp casting a warm shadow over them, creating a serene atmosphere after the intensity of the performances. "You have a true gift, Nicholas," Teodoro said, his voice filled with warmth and sincerity. "I'm really proud of you." Nicholas smiled, but there was a hint of worry in his expression that he couldn't quite hide. "Thank you, Teodoro, but I'm still worried that all of this won't be enough to help my grandmother." Sensing the young boy's anxiety, Teodoro gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "We'll make sure she gets the help she needs. I told you, you're doing an amazing job, and I'll be here by your side until your grandmother is well." Those comforting words brought a moment of relief to Nicholas, but the weight of his responsibility still pressed down on him. His determination remained strong, but the concern for his grandmother Margarita's health never left his mind. At the same time, Denise, the caring cook from the orphanage, continued to play a crucial role in Nicholas's life. Every night, after dinner, she helped him sneak out of the orphanage without being noticed, ensuring he made it to his performances on time. Her concern for Nicholas was genuine, and she did everything in her power to support him in his mission. The relationship between Denise and Teodoro, which had begun with mutual respect, gradually deepened over time. Their shared dedication to helping Nicholas brought them closer together. Their conversations about the boy's future and their strategies for supporting him created a bond that went beyond professionalism. They found comfort and understanding in one another, not just sharing their worries for Nicholas, but also the challenges and joys that came with their responsibilities. Teodoro and Denise frequently met to discuss how to improve Nicholas's situation. Their conversations always imbued with a shared sense of hope and a sincere desire to help. They would spend hours talking through every detail, constantly searching for ways to offer the best possible support for the young singer. One quiet evening, with all the children at the orphanage fast asleep, the air seemed charged with anticipation for Nicholas's next mission. He was preparing for another performance at the Villa Churrasco Grill when Denise entered the room with a small, carefully wrapped package. Curious, Nicholas raised an eyebrow and asked, "What's this?" His tone carried surprise. Denise smiled, her eyes sparkling with affection. "It's a suit," she said, handing him the package. "I thought you'd like something special for your performances. I want you to have something that reflects your talent. I'll be there tonight to watch you sing." Nicholas's eyes lit up with genuine excitement as he began to unwrap the package. Carefully, he peeled back the wrapping to reveal a gleaming suit with a soft sheen that seemed to capture the light in an almost magical way. The suit was elegant and sophisticated, with a cut that perfectly matched the style of his performances. "Thank you, Denise," Nicholas said, his voice filled with emotion. "It's perfect. I don't know how to thank you." Denise smiled warmly, her heart swelling with joy at seeing Nicholas so happy. "You don't have to thank me, dear. Now go and shine. You deserve to show the world just how special you are." Dressed in the suit, feeling a deep sense of gratitude and pride, Nicholas knew that Denise had carefully chosen every detail. This only strengthened his resolve to give his best on stage. After one last glance in the mirror, adjusting the suit to ensure everything was perfect, he left the orphanage, confident and ready for another night of performances. That evening, the suit shimmered under the streetlights, reflecting the same energy and hope that Nicholas carried with him to the stage. His performances at the Villa Churrasco Grill continued to draw larger crowds, and each night, his voice resonated with more passion and emotion, as if fueled by the love and support of those around him. The crowds were growing larger with each performance, and Nicholas's presence on stage, especially in his new suit, added a touch of magic to his shows. Meanwhile, in the hospital, Roberta had recovered well physically, but her curiosity about Nicholas had only intensified. The unsettling resemblance between the young singer and Andre continued to haunt her, and her desire to uncover more about him became more urgent with each passing day. As soon as Nicholas stepped onto the stage that evening, the restaurant fell into complete silence. The eager audience directed their attention toward the young performer, who was preparing to captivate them once again. When he began to sing, his voice quickly filled the room, flooding it with deep emotion. Every note seemed to resonate with sincerity and passion, and his performance was marked by an intensity that left the audience spellbound. Sitting at the back of the room, Roberta watched closely. As Nicholas sang, the similarity to Andre became more and more evident to her. It was as if every movement, every note, was a distant echo of her past. The way Nicholas moved on stage, the depth of his voice, and even the way he gazed out at the audience, everything seemed to evoke memories that Roberta had tried hard to bury. Her eyes remained fixed on Nicholas as her mind raced, trying to understand the connection. The emotional impact of Nicholas's performance heightened her perception, making every detail feel even more significant. As the music drew to a close, the audience remained in reverent silence, completely absorbed in the magic of his performance. Roberta, on the other hand, felt a mixture of shock and hope, struggling to process what she had just experienced. Nicholas's talent and stage presence were undeniably powerful, but to her, they were tied to something much deeper, a sense that he might be connected to Andre in a way she could not yet comprehend. When the last note of Nicholas's song faded into the air, and the restaurant slowly filled with the usual post-show chatter, Roberta stood up from her seat at the back of the room. With a determined stride, she made her way to the bar, where Teodoro Valente was organizing things and receiving compliments from customers still under the spell of the performance. Roberta, her emotions raw and close to the surface, approached Teodoro. "Excuse me, Mr. Valente," Roberta said, her voice slightly trembling with tension. She tried to keep her composure, but it was clear that her concern ran deep. "I need to speak with you about Nicholas." Teodoro, hearing Nicholas's name, looked up at Roberta, his expression immediately cautious. He recognized her as the woman who had fainted during one of the boys' earlier performances. There was something familiar about her appearance and the way she spoke that made Teodoro realize this situation could be more complicated than he had anticipated. "Of course, but what do you want to know?" Teodoro asked, his tone neutral as he studied Roberta's face. Roberta took a deep breath, carefully choosing her words. "I believe Nicholas may be related to someone I knew a long time ago. Someone very close to me, perhaps his father. That means there's a strong connection between us. Can you tell me more about his story?" Teodoro hesitated, the internal conflict evident in his face. He was well aware of the importance of Nicholas's privacy and had promised to protect him from any unwanted interference. "Nicholas is an orphan," Teodoro began, his voice heavy with sadness. "His mother passed away, and his father left the city years ago. He lives in the local orphanage and sings here to raise money for his grandmother's surgery. She's the one who took him to the orphanage after she became ill." Teodoro's words hit Roberta like a wave. The idea that Nicholas was facing such a harsh reality, working tirelessly just to help his grandmother, moved her deeply. Her heart clenched at the thought of such a talented and determined young boy living in such difficult circumstances. "I need to speak with him," Roberta pleaded, her voice almost imploring. "Please, it's important. I need to understand if there's a connection to my past." Teodoro studied Roberta, weighing whether or not to grant her request. He knew Nicholas was in a delicate situation and didn't want to complicate the boy's life with unresolved matters from the past. However, seeing the sincerity and pain in Roberta's eyes, he realized that this conversation might be vital for all involved. "All right," Teodoro agreed, though reluctantly. "I'll call Nicholas to speak with you. But please be careful with what you ask him. He's already dealing with a lot." Teodoro left to fetch Nicholas, while Roberta stood at the bar, anxious and eager for the answer she had long been searching for. She knew this moment could uncover truths that might change the lives of everyone involved. Teodoro found Nicholas in the dressing room, where the young performer was preparing for his next show. Still dressed in his shimmering suit, Nicholas looked up as Teodoro entered. "There's someone who needs to speak with you," Teodoro said gently. Dressed in his shining suit, Nicholas approached the table with a mix of curiosity and nervousness, knowing that Roberta Costa, the woman who had fainted during one of his performances, was waiting for him. "Nicholas, this is Mrs. Costa," Teodoro said, gesturing toward Roberta. "She wants to speak with you." Nicholas greeted her politely, offering a smile that only partially masked his apprehension. "Hello, Mrs. Costa. How can I help you?" he asked. Roberta took a deep breath, trying to keep her emotions in check. This moment was crucial, and she needed to remain calm to avoid overwhelming the young man. "I need to ask you something very important," she began, her voice steady but tinged with tension. "Do you know anything about your parents? Specifically, your father?" Nicholas, puzzled, shook his head. "Unfortunately, I don't know much. My father left me with my grandmother when I was very young, after my mother died. I don't even know his name because my grandmother never told me." Roberta's eyes widened in surprise at this revelation. "Your grandmother never told you anything about your father?" she asked, struggling to maintain her composure. Nicholas thought for a moment, trying to recall. "She always said my father had great musical talent, like me, but that's all I know." Roberta felt a surge of both hope and despair at hearing this description. It matched perfectly with the man she had loved all those years ago. "I knew someone exactly like that. His name was Andre. He had an incredible voice. We were separated almost 15 years ago," Roberta explained, her voice softening as she remembered. Nicholas, intrigued and suddenly anxious, asked, "Do you think my father could be that Andre?" Roberta nodded slowly, her mind racing to connect the pieces. "It's possible. The talent, the way you sing, it all seems to fit. We need to speak to your grandmother. Maybe she can confirm if Andre was your father. If this is true, I don't know how to process it." I never imagined this could be possible. Teodoro, who had been quietly observing from the background, knew that the situation was delicate. Any misstep could cause even more emotional pain for both Nicholas and Roberta. Nicholas, if this is true, there's a lot more at stake here, Teodoro said cautiously. Perhaps it would be best to speak with your grandmother as soon as possible. She might be able to give us more information. Nicholas nodded, though his expression was filled with uncertainty. Yes, we could talk to her, but I'm not sure how she'll feel about discussing my father. Roberta, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety, thanked Teodoro. Thank you so much for listening. I really hope we can find some answers. Nicholas, still processing the conversation, excused himself to prepare for his next performance, his mind racing with the new revelations and the desire to uncover more about his past. Roberta also said her goodbyes, leaving the restaurant with a renewed sense of hope at the possibility of a connection to the man who had meant so much to her. As Teodoro walked Roberta to the exit, he reflected on the steps that lay ahead. A visit to the hospital was arranged quickly, driven by the urgency of the situation. The next morning, Roberta and Nicholas arrived at the geriatrics ward, both carrying a mix of nervousness and hope. The hospital was calm, slowly coming to life with the start of a new day. Margarita was lying in a hospital bed in a shared room, visibly weak but smiling warmly as Roberta and Nicholas entered. Her eyes sparkled with recognition when she saw Roberta. "Roberta Costa, after all these years. I thought you were dead," Margarita said, her voice tired but filled with emotion. "I can't believe you're here." Nicholas, eager for answers, watched with a combination of expectation and nervousness. "You know this woman?" he asked, his voice tinged with curiosity and unease. Margarita looked at Roberta, then back at Nicholas, her expression a mixture of sadness and love. "Yes, Nicholas. She's your father's old girlfriend. He told me she had died shortly after." "Well, it doesn't matter," she said, pausing before continuing. Andre, my son. I can't even say his name without my heart breaking. He loved you so much, Nicholas, but he had to leave to protect you. I always wanted to tell you the truth, but I never knew how." Margarita's words hit Nicholas like a hammer blow. He remained silent for a moment, and tears began to form in his eyes. The weight of his grandmother's revelation, confirming a truth he had never even imagined, was almost too much to bear. Roberta, seeing Nicholas's reaction, felt a wave of both pain and relief. She stepped closer to him, her eyes filled with love and regret. "So, you were my father's girlfriend?" Nicholas asked, his voice filled with disbelief. "Do you know who my mother is?" Roberta took a deep breath, struggling to keep her voice steady. "Actually, I am your mother, Nicholas. I searched for Andre for so long, and now I've finally found you." Roberta's words echoed in the room, and Nicholas stood still, trying to process the magnitude of the revelation. "You're my mother?" he repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. Roberta nodded, her eyes filled with tears as she reached out to him. "Yes, Nicholas. I'm your mother." Slowly, as if trying to process this new reality, Nicholas whispered, "And I never knew." Roberta stepped closer to him, her eyes filled with deep love and a sadness for all the time they had lost. She reached out and gently touched Nicholas's arm, her voice breaking slightly with emotion. "I never stopped searching for you. One day, your father left with you when you were just a newborn. We hadn't even decided on your name yet. My first instinct was to go to your grandmother, but when I arrived, I discovered the family had moved away. I searched everywhere, even went to the police, but I never found you. I regret all the lost time, but I'm here now. We'll get through this together." Nicholas felt a mix of joy and disbelief. Roberta's words offered him a new perspective on his life and his past. He looked at the woman standing before him, and in that moment, the room was filled with an intense emotional energy. Margarita, watching from her bed, wore a look of both concern and relief, knowing that her life's purpose was almost fulfilled. Nicholas approached Roberta, his eyes brimming with tears, overwhelmed by the realization that the mother he had unknowingly longed for was now standing in front of him. "I don't know what to say," he murmured, his voice trembling. "I never imagined I would find you like this." He grasped her hands, his heart pounding with emotion. "There's no need to say anything right now," Roberta said gently. "We're here, and that's what matters. Let's start building a new life together." With the truth finally revealed, a new chapter began for Nicholas, Roberta, and Margarita. The revelation brought with it a wave of change and renewed hope as the three began to plan the future they had all longed for. Roberta, with her experience and financial resources, took charge of the situation with calm determination. Margarita's surgery was quickly scheduled, and all necessary arrangements were made to ensure she received the best care possible. Now secure in the knowledge of his family ties, Nicholas continued his performances at the restaurant, but with a different mindset. His heart felt lighter, and the pain he had carried for so long seemed to have dissipated. Even the audience noticed a change in his performances. There was a new depth and emotion in his songs, something that only someone who has found inner peace can convey. Each note carried the weight of newfound hope and a renewed sense of happiness. Teodoro and Denise were deeply moved by the family reunion. They had witnessed Nicholas's journey from the very beginning and now felt like an essential part of his story. Teodoro, always the mentor and protector, beamed with pride at seeing the joy that had finally come to Nicholas and the peace that had been restored between Roberta and Margarita. Denise, who had helped Nicholas sneak out of the orphanage for his performances, felt immense pride at seeing the happiness and fulfillment on his face. Her unwavering support and care had been vital, and now she felt blessed to witness Nicholas's transformation firsthand. With Roberta and Margarita now actively present in his life, they found a balance despite the challenges of the past. Together, they formed an unexpected yet solid alliance, dedicating themselves to ensuring Nicholas had the support and stability he needed to move forward. The future appeared bright, and with his talent and determination, Nicholas was ready to seize every opportunity that came his way. The road ahead would still have its ups and downs, but with the unwavering support of his family and friends, those who had been by his side through every struggle, Nicholas was finally ready to embrace life with hope in his heart and peace in his mind. And so, with the truth revealed and the family reunited, Nicholas, Roberta, and Margarita began to write a new chapter in their lives. Every step was guided by a newfound energy and a renewed love. They were ready to face the future with courage and determination, knowing that together they could overcome any challenge that lay ahead. I hope you enjoyed this story full of emotion and surprises. If you liked it and want more exciting narratives like this, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Each story is a new adventure, and we're always ready to surprise you. Feel free to leave a comment about what you thought of the story and suggestions for future narratives. Until next time,